Alright, so this is something I wanted to do last week, but I just couldn't find the time to upload it. But here we go, the 2017 NFL Mock Draft 1.0, or at least my 2017 NFL Mock Draft 1.0. Now, I figured since we're at the halfway point of the NFL regular season, I think it's time to start unleashing these mock drafts. Now, who really knows how accurate this is? I mean, spoiler alert, there's not really... It gets really highly defensive. Because I have a lot of defensive players going with so many picks in a row, kind of toward the end. You'll kind of see where I'm getting at. So I'm planning on maybe doing them maybe every 2 to 3 weeks. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, the first overall pick. Now, before I get to this is not the official draft order, but this is the draft order as of last Wednesday. So with the first overall pick, I have the Cleveland Browns going with Deshaun, Kizer, the quarterback out of Notre Dame. Now, the Browns just seem to go with a quarterback every single year, and they don't win with any of them. Although I don't think this works out. I don't think it would work out. I think Deshaun Watson would be a much better fit for Cleveland's system. Although with number 2, maybe it can work in their system as well. Number 2, I have the 49ers going with Deshaun Watson, the quarterback out of Clemson. Now, this is kind of going back to last year's debate of Jared Goff versus Carson Wentz versus Paxton Lynch. And then it came down to Goff and Wentz. So this year we're going to have kind of a repeat, except it's not going to be Goff versus Wentz or Lynch. It's going to be the Deshaun debate between Deshaun, Kizer, or Deshaun Watson. Personal opinion, I would want Deshaun Watson, at least to start my franchise around right now. And of course, I'll probably get into that probably in January once both these quarterbacks officially declare for the draft. Because there could be a small chance they want to come back to school, maybe win a national championship or get to a major bowl game. But I think Deshaun Watson can just come out. He could have declared last year. All right, number 3, I have the Chicago Bears going with Myles, Garrett, the defensive end of Texas A&M. Although this probably is Jay Cutler's last day in Chicago. It's been gone around surfacing that this is his last year with Chicago. But there's more problems than just the quarterback position. I think defense is important to win championships. And you got to just go on and build your defense. Because the defense has struggled for like years in and years on out. So start rebuilding the defense with getting the best player in this draft class in Myles Garrett. Number 4, I have the Carolina Panthers going with Jalen Tabor, the cornerback out of Florida. Now, many think Carolina's running game is a little bit weaker than the secondary. But what's really weaker about the Panthers is the offensive line. There's not that many offensive line prospects that are in my first round. In fact, I'll spoil it, I'm only going to have one offensive lineman taken in this first round. At least that's how this mock draft is working out so far. But some think the Panthers should just draft Leonard Fournette. I mean, last year the Cowboys had the 4th overall pick and drafted Ezekiel Elliott, and that's working out really fantastic. But I just think the Panthers need to improve that secondary because they drafted 3 corners last year. They're not using any of them. And they've lost Josh Norman. They lost Charles Tillman. So you got to just get corners. Get the best corner in this draft class in Jalen Tabor. And we'll move on. And we'll start from there. Number 5 of the New York Jets going with Brad Kaaya, the quarterback out of Miami, Florida. Now the Jets, they re-signed Ryan Fitzpatrick this year. This could be his last season. And they don't really want to go on to Geno Smith because really, who would want to have Geno Smith as their starting quarterback going into next season? And they'll probably maybe cut Bryce Petty. But the thing is, I don't like about this pick is, do the Jets and Todd Bowles really want to have a quarterback battle between Brad Kaaya and Christian Hackenberg, who they drafted last in the second round? But I just think Brad Kaaya, it would work out for him, even if he had to start as the backup for a while. He has the receivers around him at the Jets, like with Eric Decker and Brandon Marshall, and Quincy Enunwa even starting to make a name for himself in New York. Our number 6 are the Jaguars with Jonathan Allen, the defensive tackle out of Alabama. Now, in any other draft, with the exception of the 2016 draft, I just feel like Jonathan Allen would be a top 5 pick. But since there's all these quarterbacks that's going to get taken in the top 5, because so many teams are quarterback desperate, it's going to mess up Jonathan Allen being in the top 5. I feel like if he was in the 2014 draft class, or if he's in next year's draft class, I think he would be for sure a top 5 pick, no questions asked. But I think he's just going to be outside the top 5. Number 7, I like the New Orleans Saints go with Adoree Jackson, the cornerback and kick returner of USC. Now, Adoree Jackson being on special teams, that means he has speed. The Saints just need some speed. They got to improve the defense. It's looked horrible. And plus, get a player that's a double versatile athlete who can play corner and a kick returner. That means he's got speed and talent. And especially with all these receivers in the NFC South, like Mike Evans, Julio Jones, Kelvin Benjamin, Greg Olsen. Get yourself an elite speed corner. Number 8, I have the Baltimore Ravens going with Jabrill Peppers, the safety and linebacker out of Michigan. Now, Jabrill Peppers was probably one of, if not my favorite athlete in this 2010 NFL draft class. I mean, he can do everything. He's a multiple-dimensional athlete. He can play safety, he can play linebacker. He can even be a punt returner. He can even be a running back. He can do 4 different things. And he's one of my favorite athletes to watch. He's probably a once-in-a-decade type of player. But many people thought that about Johnny Manziel, and look what happened. But I think Jabrill Peppers is kind of more disciplined. Being coached under Jim Harbaugh is really improving his draft stock. Because Jim Harbaugh knows how to coach the pros. I mean, he's coached players like Andrew Luck. He's coached Colby Fleener. And he's now coaching Jabrill Peppers. Another Michigan player that's not in the first round, Jake Butt. I think any other year he'd be in the first round for sure. But I think the tight end is early at a premium in the NFL nowadays. All right, number 9, I have the Indianapolis Colts with Marshaun Lattimore, the corner out of Ohio State. Now the Colts secondary is just complete. It's just horrendous. It's overwhelming. And they got to draft a corner just as desperately as they can. All right, number 10, I have the Tennessee Titans with Malik Hooker, the safety of Ohio State. Now this is a pick. Tennessee got to improve the secondary, and they will with the 12th pick as well. But I'll get to the 11th pick first. I like Miami, the Dolphins, to go with Jamal Adams, the safety out of LSU. Because Miami's going to improve their secondary as well. Miami's a young team. They've got a bunch of young players on the team. But they got to improve on the secondary spot if they want to increase their chances of going to the playoffs in their tough division. Number 12, the Titans go with Marlon Humphrey, the corner out of Alabama. Now, Marlon Humphrey, he could be a top 10 pick. He could easily be maybe toward the top 10 by the time we get to the draft. But I think he's right where he is right now at number 12. All right, number 13, I have the Bengals with Malik McDowell, the defensive tackle of Michigan State. Now, the Bengals, they just were humiliated by Dallas a couple of weeks ago. They've been humiliated by Denver, and they've been humiliated. They just haven't had a good year. I think they got to improve defensively, especially within the front seven. I think Malik McDowell will be a huge piece of the puzzle if they can have him on the team. Number 14, I have Marcus Maye, the safety out of Florida. San Diego's, they have 3 good corners on their team, but they just need to improve in the safety position. I think Marcus Maye can do that because he's lined up with Jalen Tabor, who is going to be, without a doubt, a top 10 pick for sure. Number 15, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going with JuJu Smith-Schuster, the wide receiver of USC. Vincent Jackson's probably not going to be on the team next year. He's going to be a free agent. Because who wants to play their whole career in Tampa Bay? A team that probably will not make the playoffs anytime soon. So Tampa Bay is going to have to draft JuJu Smith-Schuster or any other wide receiver to complement Mike Evans. All right, number 6, I have the Arizona Cardinals going with Desmond King, the cornerback out of Iowa. The Cardinals just need to improve on all sorts of pieces. I mean, the Cardinals will probably take a quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round to try to replace Carson Palmer because he is getting up there in age. But I think the Cardinals want to improve defensively first. Number 17, I have the Buffalo Bills with Mike Williams, wide receiver of Clemson. This is a pick to complement Sammy Watkins because the Bills don't really have any good receiver, any elite wide receivers. Number 18, I have the Detroit Lions with Dalvin Cook, the running back out of Florida State. And this is kind of the pick that maybe doesn't necessarily need to happen, but it can totally be helpful. Because the Lions have just gone through so many running backs the last couple of years. They've gone through Reggie Bush. They've gone through Joique Bell. They've just gone through so much in the running game. And they can't find a consistent number one back. And right now, Amir Abdullah, he's not too bad, but I don't see him being elite quite yet. And I think Dalvin Cook, I think he would make the Detroit Lions happy. I think this is a pick they can surely use to get pressure off Matthew Stafford if he's still going to be the quarterback next year. Number 19 of the Washington Redskins with Tre'davious White at the corner of LSU. The Redskins just need a solid corner to complement Josh Norman. Because Washington secondary just still has issues, even though they have probably one of the best corners in the league last year. But that's because he was on a winning team. Now the Redskins are not necessarily a winning team all the time like the Panthers were last year. I just think they need this corner in Tre'davious White to complement Josh Norman. Number 20 of the New York Giants go with Cam Robinson, the offensive tackle of Alabama. Now this is the one offensive tackle I have in the first round, at least in 1.0. The New York Giants need to protect Eli Manning. You got to protect your franchise quarterback. And you got to fill in holes for your running game. Because the Giants have gone through so many running backs too over the years. Maybe if the Detroit Lions pass up on Dalvin Cook, maybe they would take Dalvin Cook if they fell to them at 20. Or they could take Leonard Fournette, who is yet to be taken. Number 21 of the Atlanta Falcons with Derek Barnett, the defensive end out of Tennessee. Now Atlanta's pass rush needs some help as well. Because we've seen their pass rush struggle time after time after time after again the last 4 seasons. And nobody has done anything about it. Mike Smith didn't do anything about it, and Dan Quinn is ignoring it right now. And defense is what Dan Quinn strives on. So Derek Barnett would be a solid pick, considering that Atlanta's pass rush is getting kind of... There's some that are kind of old. Like, they've got older players in there, like Dwight Freeney. And when he retires, then what? Number 22, I have Houston go with Garon Conley, the corner out of Ohio State. Houston just has several problems, but the secondary is just really a big problem for them. So draft a solid corner and build around it. 23 out of the Pittsburgh Steelers with Tim Williams, the defensive end, and the outside linebacker of Alabama. Now, what better way to show that a prospect is ready for the NFL like somebody that comes from Alabama? I mean, it's coached by Nick Saban, who spent some time in the NFL with the Miami Dolphins, but it didn't necessarily work out. But he used that experience to build up on some NFL-type defenses. Because Nick Saban is, what he probably did is he used the teams that kept beating him, and he just looked at what he was doing on defense and the offense side of the football. Look at all the Alabama players that were coached by Nick Saban. Look at all of them that are in the pros right now. Eddie Lacy, Julio Jones, Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson, who is not really on an NFL roster, but still. And defensive players that were on that side of the football. I mean, just think about it. There's always Alabama players that are going to be in the first round. Because Alabama is one of those teams that they prepare college players for the NFL. That's why people like to go to Alabama, because they want to go to the high level. Just think about it. We've already had 1, 2, 3. This is the 4th player from Alabama in the first round of the mock draft. And there's probably going to be one more coming up. I'm not going to say whether it is or not. So you have to stay tuned. Number 24, the Cleveland Browns going with Cordia Tankersley, the corner out of Clemson. Cleveland just needs help in the secondary position as well. I mean, you've got wide receivers like Antonio Brown, you got Rashard Perriman. You even got Marcus Wheaton and Tavis Bryant next year when he comes off that suspension. You're going to need corners to win division games. And Tankersley is a really great corner. Solid. He's really solid. He's really good at covering guys. And I think Cleveland just needs this pick, because this is, by the way, Philadelphia's pick that they traded for. Number 25, the Kansas City Chiefs going with Charles Harris, the defensive end of Missouri. Now you got Tom Bahali getting up there in age. You got Justin Houston, who's kind of injury prone. So Charles Harris would be a solid pick, and he's the best player on the Missouri defense, hands down. 26, I had the Green Bay Packers with Sidney Jones, the corner out of Washington. Now, we have seen the Packers secondary just stink it up this year. I mean, wide receivers have just torched them. Last week, it was the unexpected wide receiver that torched them. It wasn't Julio Jones. It was Mohamed Sanu. So that was a huge surprise. And Taylor Gabriel also just torched the Packers secondary. And it's hard to believe that Taylor Gabriel came from the Cleveland Browns. And the Packers have just been banged up on secondary all year. Their defense has been weak the last handful of years, at least the last 4 seasons. But that's being overshadowed by the talent that they have on offense, led by Aaron Rodgers, Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, Eddie Lacy. It's just being overshadowed by the offense. Number 27, I have the Denver Broncos with Reuben Foster, the linebacker of Alabama. Now, Denver's defense is really great. I mean, it's a great defense, but it can be even better. Putting Reuben Foster at this spot, following him to Denver 27, it's like giving Superman another power. I mean, Denver's defense is just already as magnificent as it is already, even though they have losses against San Diego and Atlanta. It would just make the defense even much stronger than it is. Number 20, I have the Seattle Seahawks with Carroll Phillips, the defensive end out of Illinois. Seattle's defense just needs to improve. The Legion of Boom. I mean, it hasn't been what it is. It hasn't been what it is last year, especially giving up a huge rushing game by Tim Hightower last week of the Saints. He went for over 100 yards in that game. They got to improve on the front seven to stop that run. 29, I like Oakland to go with Zach Cunningham, the linebacker out of Vanderbilt. I just think this is kind of a build around your defense, because your offense is fine right now, but there are still some holes in the defense that they still need to figure out. Number 20, I have the Dallas Cowboys with John Ross, the wide receiver of Washington. And John Ross is having a really good season with Washington, and he caught 2 touchdowns last week and a huge win over Utah. And the Cowboys kind of need a wide receiver to complement Des Bryant, who's been injury prone the last 2 years. They got to also make a compliment for Terrence Williams and Cole Beasley, who are only decent wide receivers right now. I mean, Cole Beasley is talented, but he doesn't have the stardom power as Des Bryant does. And they're going to eventually need a number 2 go-to guy behind Des Bryant. I think John Ross fits the bill. Number 31, I had the Philadelphia Eagles going with. Now, this is the Vikings pick, by the way. I had the Eagles with Leonard Fournette, the running back out of LSU. Now, this may not be something that they need to do, but it's something they can at least consider. I mean, think about it. This is Minnesota's pick. Who does Leonard Fournette usually mostly remind people of? Adrian Peterson. A guy that just runs right over defenders. That's not afraid to get his head down and just take hits. So why not use the Vikings pick that you used to give him Sam Bradford and just basically draft what they drafted a couple years ago at 7th overall in Adrian Peterson. Get someone that reminds them of Adrian Peterson. Someone that's not afraid to run right toward the tackles and take hits. Although they don't necessarily need it, but they consider just moving Darren Sproles to permanently on the special teams. Especially maybe if they want to consider dealing Ryan Matthews at the end of the year. I mean, nobody thought they're going to deal with Sean McCoy 2 years ago, now did they? Number 32, I have the New England Patriots with Christian McCaffrey, the running back out of Stanford. And if you think about it, this is almost a destined pick. I mean, Christian McCaffrey just really reminds people of a Danny Woodhead. He just reminds me of Danny Woodhead, just kind of a short running back that probably won't necessarily make it as a full-time running back like maybe a Leonard Fournette or Dalvin Cook. But he's really good at, he can play a slot receiver. He can be on punt coverage, kick returns. That's basically a pick made in heaven for New England. Again, I'm going to compare it to, that would just be giving Superman another power. Although, because Dion Lewis is injury prone, I mean, the Garrett Blunt probably won't be able to stay out of trouble the rest of his career. Basically, they're taking hits in the running game. So draft Christian McCaffrey, put him as the backup running back. Maybe a third and short back like Danny Woodhead. Something to think about. So that's going to do it for my 2017 NFL Mock Draft 1.0. Like and subscribe to the channel. Comment below if you agree with my picks. I'll also put the picks in the description box just in case if some may forget. Although, have a good day, everybody. I will see you next time.